Oh, hi. My name is Pastor Sam O'Donnell, and I've been involved in church work for a long time, probably over 40 years. I started in 1981, so um, I haven't really done the math. I think that's somewhere around 43 years or so, but a long time. I started when I was 13, and I began as a bus helper and children's church helper, and basically what those two jobs entailed was uh, being with the kids and keeping their attention focused on the what was going on in the front of the room, or keeping them quiet on the bus, keeping them from tussling or whatever. So I moved from there to various positions in the church, from uh, co-teacher in children's church to directing my own children's church to serving on boards, committees, leading Bible studies, things like that. A lot of experience, all the way up to and including pastoring a church. So I've got some experience under my belt that I feel like maybe I could share with others, and they could learn a few things from me and wouldn't have to learn them the hard way. One of those is public speaking. Not that pastors are necessarily bad at public speaking, but every good teacher I know is constantly trying to improve. Same goes for preachers. Um, they are constantly, the best preachers out there are constantly reviewing their tapes, reviewing their recordings, reviewing their videos to watch for distracting traits or vocalized pauses. That's something I struggle with, especially when I'm speaking extemporaneously, like I'm doing now. I have a list here of things that I want to cover, but it's not expansive. So I'm kind of doing this off the cuff, and I haven't recorded in a while, so I'm still getting used to looking at the camera instead of the screen. Some of you by now have probably caught me at that. I feel like I do much better in person than I do on screen. However, uh, I wanted to get this information into your hands, so I took to video. So uh, let's get started, and I'll give you 8 tips and a few sub tips of things to uh, do and not do that may help you in your responsibilities where it concerns public speaking. So here's the first: know your stuff. Uh, Nothing will make you less nervous or make you feel more confident than knowing your material. I remember being asked to do a speech in Airman Leadership School, and they said we could choose a speech on anything. So I thought, okay, I'll do mine on puppetry. So that's what I did. I did very well on the speech. Um, Now, if somebody had asked me to do something about auto mechanics, totally outside my wheelhouse. Couldn't do it. Wouldn't the congregation wouldn't enjoy it, neither would I. Um, so stick to what you know and know your stuff. Um, with that, memorize your introduction. This little tip will help you quell a lot of nervousness because you know your stuff. You know what you're going to say and uh, how you're going to begin. And if you can start those first few seconds of your speech with an introduction you're familiar with, it's going to help you to roll into your subject matter much more cleanly, because you will have worked a transitional statement into your introduction, and that's going to carry you very smoothly into your next topic. So then present the body of your information. Now, when you present the body of your information, you don't have to necessarily write your speech or sermon out completely longhand. I have friends that do, I have friends that don't. Um, but what you will need is some type of structure that, whether it's in your mind or on paper, that takes you through the body of the sermon, whether you're a person who uses points, point A, transitional statement, point B, transitional statement, point C, uh, conclusion, uh, or you're somebody like I am that you typically uses a single point sermon, and the thrust for me is to uh, begin with the ending in mind. I think it was Dale Carnegie that said that, but to think about that one thing that you want people to remember and practice, and you choose one thing and you hit it repeatedly throughout the body of your message, and so it becomes something that's sticky in the people's minds, and the hope is that it will engender those water cooler conversations, those types of unexpected uh, conversations between people that lead to, hey, you know what, my pastor said something this weekend that I thought was germane to this, or I'm really chewing on, still thinking about this. Um, so knowing your material is going to help you relax and be relatable. There's nothing more phony than talking to somebody before a presentation and then have them get up to speak and they become this whole other person. It's like, that looks like the person that I met before the sermon or the speech, but the person on stage is very different from the person that I met. You don't want that to happen to you. You want to be the same person that you are on the conference floor as you're talking to people, or you know, in the lobby as you're speaking to people before the service, as you are when you speak. I had something happen to me that might illustrate this point. I was at a conference, and I was one of the breakout speakers, and I overheard somebody. I had met somebody in the hallway, and they happened to be one of the people that would be in my session. And I overheard them walking out saying, "Hey, he's the same person that I met in the hallway, and he was the same person when he spoke." Um, that gives you that genuine quality. And don't be phony. People can see right through that. And if your message is important, be relatable. And for some people, you have to work on this. Uh, they've been trained to flip a switch when you step onto the platform. It's suddenly you're somebody else. Well, be who you are, and present the way that you do. With that, don't feel buttonholed into having to teach or preach like somebody else does. I have a lot of favorite speakers, but I've come to understand through the years, and through some very direct teaching from the Lord, to teach the way He taught me to teach. So spend that time with the Lord, and ask Him to help you as you develop. Um, Another illustration I found: I learned puppetry on my own. I didn't have any training per se until I went to a puppet production seminar. And there were some things they taught me, and some things that they just taught me the nomenclature for some of the techniques. It's like, hey, I'm already doing that. I just didn't know what it was called. So I let the Lord teach you too. Uh, as to speaking itself, the mechanics, make sure you're not speaking in a monotone. Modulate your voice a little bit, change the timbre and the pitch of it just a little, to add some excitement. Don't overdo it, but at the same time, don't speak in a monotone or people get bored with what you say. Speak in a conversational tone. Most people, especially modern people, they don't care much for the preacher's voice. Some people do. Some people like the hellfire and brimstone type of preaching. Most of the people that I've encountered, maybe it's just the circles I run in, I get this repeatedly. Thank you, Pastor, for being yourself, and thank you for making it simple. Um, when you make the subject simple, you understand it well. Einstein, I think it was, said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. And that's been a good North Star for me. Can I explain this subject simply? Do I understand it well enough that I could present it to a 10-year-old and they would understand it? Um, that keeps me honest. Um, so watch the pitch and tone of your voice, practice and keep it interesting. Record yourself, play the recording back, and it's tough. I know it's tough to listen to your own recordings, uh, but it's necessary uh, to become a better speaker. Uh, so present the material, and uh, whether by outline or manuscript or whatever technique you use, limit yourself to your topic. In other words, don't chase rabbits. If you're speaking about a subject, stick to the subject. Now, there may be an illustration or something that you do, but everything that you do comes back to your sermon or your presentation. Everything revolves, and that's why I use a 1 point sermon. Um, I keep bringing things around to that 1 point, that one thing that I want people to remember. Now, I know some people who use uh, 3 points, an intro and a close, and that works. Um, but still, they have some type of central theme, and your theme needs to come, if you're preaching, your theme needs to come from scripture after thorough exegesis and hermeneutics. Maybe I'll teach on those some other time. Uh, but present your material and then quit. If you've spoken for 10 minutes and made your point and people understand it, then stop. If you need 40 minutes and the audience is still tracking with you, then do the 40 minutes. I remember speaking at my home church um, one Sunday morning, and the congregation and I were just having a good time together. And I happened to look up, and you know, it was 10 minutes past the time we normally quit. And I said, "Oh, folks, I'm sorry, I've run over time." And the people in the audience were so gracious that, "Oh, finish. We're having a good time." So they were gracious and gave me another 5 or 10 minutes, and I finished, and we left as friends. Um, there have been other times when I've gone in and the Lord just spoke in a 10 or 15 minute window, and that was it, and things were over. So listen to that still small voice of the Holy Spirit, and let the Spirit guide you in your speaking. And don't repeat if you don't have to. If you do repeat, make sure that it's a very important point that you want to reemphasize. As I said before, I'd like to tell you that the sun will come up tomorrow, so there's hope. Whatever your point is, that's just what came into my head at the top of my. Then presentation wise, whatever presentation software that you're using, use it sparingly, and don't use it as a crutch to speak. Don't put your notes on the PowerPoint. Keep your words few. No more than I usually use just. There have been times when I've just used one word. If I was going to put a PowerPoint together on this that I'm presenting to you now, one of my slides would just say memorize, and then I would expand, because I want the people to remember what I'm speaking, and I want my presentation software to underscore what it is that I'm saying. I don't want my PowerPoint to reiterate what I'm saying, because if I put too many things on the slide, then people are going to spend their time reading all the information that's on the slide instead of listening to the speaker, in this case, me. So cut down on the number of words and use pictures wherever you can. If you can find a graphic or a cartoon or something funny that makes your point, some type of illustration, put that up on the screen and then speak about the picture. People remember pictures better than they do words. Also, if you can do something where people are doing something with their hands and gesture or uh, doing something with you. Uh, I remember one time I did a sermon on the importance of evangelism. I brought in a big bag of plain M&Ms, and I picked that bag up. I said, "Okay, let's pretend that this bag, the M&Ms in this bag, represent the gospel message." Well, I'm trying to share the gospel message with everybody, and so I'm running here, and I'd run to one side of the auditorium, and I'd pour M&Ms in people's hands, and I deliberately did it sloppy so M&Ms went everywhere, made it kind of fun and funny, and then I ran over deliberately over to the other side, skipped the middle section entirely, and gave them M&Ms, and then I did the center section, and when I gave something to somebody, I gave them so they could share it. I made that point, but then I went up to the front and leaned up against the communion table. And I'm beat. I need help. So I called a bunch of members up of the youth group up, 7 or 8 of them, and had them hold their hands together, and I poured a big handful in each of their hands. I said, "Now, you guys go share the gospel message with as many people as you can." And they did, and M&Ms were everywhere. And incidentally, there were no M&Ms on the floor. When we went to clean the sanctuary, no M&Ms. The congregation cleaned them up for us. So don't know if they ate them or not, but they were cleaned up. So um, that type of illustration where you can get people involved is golden. That people were talking about that for a couple of years afterward. They remembered that point. So use illustrations, but finally, use them sparingly. I was thinking about maybe putting hot fudge on ice cream, but I don't think you can put too much hot fudge on ice cream. But anyway, use them sparingly. It's like a seasoning. If you use a little bit of it, it brings the flavor out. You use too much, and it makes the dish taste bad. Um, you know, just a few illustrations at most. Don't overdo it, because people are going to remember better with fewer illustrations. So that's the difference between teaching kids and teaching adults, by the way. With kids, there's really no limit to the number of illustrations that you can use. But I found with adults that they prefer that you keep them to just a few. And know them well, do them well. When I do an illustration, I do it big. That's the way I was taught in children's church. You always do it big. When I do an illustration, it's a good quality item that I use that's large enough for people to see, um, so that I make my point. Lots of other illustrations I could use, but that's enough. Um, keep it brief. Boy, am I not doing this one. Say what you got to say and get off the stage when you've say what you need to, and then quit. People will love you for it, and they will remember when you've spoken. In that vein, don't try to cram too much into one sermon. I see some of my students doing this a lot, and their manuscripts are 15 pages long, and there's enough material in there for 2 or 3 sermons. If you're having to use 10 or more scriptures, or uh, you're making point after point after point after point, then it may be that you need to divide that sermon into multiple sermons. There's a really good book on this called Say It Well by Chuck Swindoll. Highly recommend it. And he lays out in detail his process for sermon prep. And I think it's just exceptional. So if you get a chance, pick that up. You can grab one online for not a lot. I've bought several used copies. They're usually around $8 or $9, sometimes with shipping. But that's a resource I highly recommend to you. Well, that's about it for this little video on public speaking for pastors. I really hope you found it helpful, and that maybe we've learned something together. Let me know what you think in the comments. So long for now.